Good afternoon to all of you. I'm directly focusing on my paper, Sarojini Naidu, the Movement for Women's Suffrage. Sorry. The demand for women's right to vote on equal terms with men dates from the very beginning of the feminism as an ideology. The movement had not made much progress. Then, 1903, Emmeline Pankhurst founded the Women's Social and Political Union (WSPU) in Britain, was more radical. But it was the First World War that rapidly provided women with the opportunity to process on their voting rights. Women had performed many of the jobs which had earlier been performed by men because men had to fight in the First World War. Sarojini Naidu saw how the women's suffrage movement had developed in Britain. 3 states at USA had already granted women's suffrage by 1912. In August 1920, American women earned suffrage right after the approval in the Senate. The socio-political scenario in India was totally different from US and Britain due to the colonial setting in the Indian subcontinent. But Sarojini Naidu raised the issue as the symbol of equality. In 1917, Sarojini Naidu led a delegation of 14 women to the Viceroy and the Secretary of State in Madras. And then I'm coming to the next point. The Mrs. Ranabai Ranade, Mrs. Sarala Devi Chaudhurani, Mrs. Uma Nehru, Mrs. Hirabai Tara, all these women participated in this delegation. A memorandum was duly presented by the All India Women's Deputation led by Sarojini to Lord Chelmsford and Mrs. E.S. Montagu, where the demand for the recognition of women as people and the grant of the representation of women in local self-government has been raised. The memorandum also pointed out the example International Congress, where in 1917 a woman was to be elected president of the Congress. During 1917 to 1919, the Indian Women Association was holding meeting through its branches, its various parts of India. A second women deputation waited on the Southborough Commission for Franchise Reform in 1918. The Southborough Franchise Committee, one of the 2 committees appointed to investigate the suggestion put forward by the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, was to deal with the election. A requisition signed by 800 educated women of the Bombay Presidency was submitted to the committee. The demands of the earlier vote for women deputation were also placed before the Southborough Committee. The 2 women appeared personally requesting Bengal and Punjab province. The Franchise Committee, which visited India under the presidency of Lord Southborough, reported in early 1919 to have received numerous petitions from women and educated class urging some female suffrage. The results was nothing. I am not going to the details what happened later on by the report of this committee. Sarojini sailed for England and she felt that the propaganda in England was important to make this suffrage battle successful. The Simon Commission then recommended in 1927 the women's suffrage should be the cardinal part of franchise system and suggested that it should not be confined to property qualifications among a few women. The commission remarked, already in 7 provinces out of 9, it is possible for women to be members of the council, and in more than 1 provinces, nomination has been to add to a woman member, though no woman candidate has ever been elected. The commission, however, was concerned with women members, not with women voters, and they considered it highly desirable to facilitate the inclusion of the women in provincial councils. So the result was 0 as per the Simon Commission's report. Then the 1931 and 32 was very much important in Indian political scenario because the Round Table Conference, where the Sarojini Naidu also represented, and she presided over a representative meeting of women held in Bombay in April 31. 3 women organizations, Women Aid Indian Association, National Council of Women in India, All India Women's Conference, jointly drew up a memorandum to be presented to the ensuing session of the Round Table Conference in September. The memorandum demanded, among other things, joint electorate and ruled out any special favor Sarojini's presence during this time played an important, significant role in Indian political scenario. She refused to accept any indirect or direct means of preferential treatment. She made it categorically clear that the three great women's organizations which represented collective view of women of India would not accept any concession in the way of co-option, nomination or reservation of seats. Sarojini worked day in and day out in London for securing women's franchise. In her struggle for women's suffrage, she got the support of Margaret Cousins. The Act of 1935 did not grant women right to vote, very unfortunate to us, but the groundwork had been done to grant adult franchise the moment India became free in 1947. There were, yes, just one minute. There were to be no more discrimination on grounds of sex, religion, caste or race for which Sarojini had so strenuously worked during all these years. The importance of women franchise to Indian social conditions and in the history of women's vote in India was realized, for which Sarojini indeed played a major role. However, the first general election of the free and independent India took place just after the death of Sarojini Naidu, for which indeed he struggled a lot, and it was an extremely tragic event in Indian social political situation. Thank you.